Day 5, folks. We are back. It is day 5 of the Sam Bankman-Fried trial, and Caroline Ellison is in the house. The moment we have all been waiting for. Caroline Ellison testified today, took the stand to make her case essentially for the prosecution. So we're going to get into all of that. I do want to say this was one of the just like mind-bendiest days in court. I feel like of all the days we've had, it is one of the harder days to summarize. And I'm also going to do something I haven't done yet in these videos, which is I'm going to go out of order. So the top part of the day was actually spent with the defense attorneys cross-examining Gary Wang. And I do want to talk about some of that. And especially for you nerds who like really want all the details, I think there were some interesting things that came out of that cross-examination. But even though that was the top part of the day, I'm going to talk about that last in the video because I think most of you really just want to hear about Miss Ellison and her testimony. So, all right, let's start with Caroline. I liked her as a witness. I mean, she was a little, it's funny to say this, but like peppier, I would say, than the other witnesses we've had. She definitely felt like a contrast to Gary Wang and Adam Yedidia and these very nerdy math boys. I mean, she's a nerdy math girl, but it was refreshing to have a girl on the stand, a woman on the stand, I suppose. It was funny. There were some giggles in the overflow room where I was when she was like at the very top of the questioning. She was like saying, yes, I committed crimes. I committed them with Sam Bankman-Fried. I committed fraud and money laundering. And to hear her be like, yeah, money laundering in her somewhat squeaky woman voice, just it felt there was like a disconnect. You're not expecting that to come out of this human being. But okay, the top part of her questioning was just her committing to the crimes that we already know she's committed to, admitted to. She re-explains them, the unlimited line of credit that Alameda had with FTX. She prepared fake balance sheets to lenders, but she was very clear that all of this happened at the behest of Sam and that she was very much at no point acting of her own accord. So that was the big theme with all of this, was even once she became the CEO or initially the co-CEO of Alameda, she was very clear that in her employment agreement, it still said that she reported to Sam. Sam was the 90% owner of this company. She said at various points that she never made any big decisions without running them past Sam. And most of the time she was doing things that were big at the direction of Sam. So let's get into some of those big things and also some of the other things that stood out to me as part of this testimony. The first thing that stood out to me, and some folks may have been aware of this, I wasn't particularly aware of this. Shortly after Caroline joined Alameda, she joined Alameda Research in March of 2018. Pretty shortly after that, more than 50% of lenders recalled their loans, so wanted their money back from Alameda, in 2018, and more than half of the company quit. So things were not good for Alameda in 2018 while Sam was running them when Caroline joined. In fact, she was so taken aback by this that she apparently said something to Sam about it, and he apologized to her. Basically, she felt he had sufficiently misrepresented what working at Alameda was going to be like when she joined it, that he felt the need to apologize and say, I didn't know how to tell you the full truth of this. But I thought that was interesting because I had this misperception that things really started to go south for Alameda later on, and maybe in 2021, certainly 2022, as things started to snowball in the crypto environment in general, but which is that time frame would have been when Caroline was more running things. But no, things were not great for Alameda even earlier on in 2018, for example. One fun tidbit that came out as part of this was that Sam apparently believed, probably not anymore, but believed he had about a 5% chance of becoming president one day. This came out in Caroline talking about the fact that he was very ambitious and wanted Alameda and FTX to become massive companies. And he was very interested in politics, she said, and thought he had a 5% chance of becoming president. The other thing that I thought was interesting is Caroline testified that Alameda was using customer deposits as early as 2020, as far as she knew, but it may have been even earlier than that. We've also had John Ray, I think that's his name, who is the interim CEO at FTX, one of the bankruptcy lawyers that stepped in after FTX went bankrupt and Sam stepped down. He has said that this was a criminal enterprise from the beginning, that basically starting in 2019, this was a quote unquote criminal enterprise. And Caroline said specifically that Sam said FTX was a good source of capital for Alameda, or that Sam saw FTX as a good source of capital for Alameda. And I'm sure this partly referred to profits from FTX, profits that FTX made, but her implication was that he clearly also saw the customer funds as a good source of funds for Alameda. And we'll see this come up later. One of the really explicit moments that Caroline pointed to when she says Sam clearly meant to use customer money was in the summer of 2021. Sam wanted to buy back about $2 billion worth of FTX shares from Binance. And he wanted Alameda to provide the capital for that. And this is where it gets kind of funny. He wanted Alameda basically to do that. But then Caroline told him, well, Alameda doesn't have enough money for this, so we would have to borrow the money from FTX. And Sam said, no problem, that's fine. This is really important that we buy back these shares, so let's do that. And Caroline testifies that he knew that clearly meant using customer money for some of that because FTX simply didn't have that much money. So Alameda borrowed the money from FTX in order to buy back the FTX shares from Binance. But the real meat of the testimony, in my opinion, came when we got some information about FTT, which we're going to talk about, and then also when we started to dig into some spreadsheets that Caroline herself made and reviewed with Sam that show pretty clearly that Sam knew that customer money was going to be used for things, and also show the level of risk appetite that Sam had. So we're going to get to both those things in just a moment, but we do need to hear a word from our amazing sponsors who make this show possible: OpenSea, Web3 Sense, and Ledger. I am so grateful for these three partners. They are the reason that I'm able to do this, and I could not be more grateful for them supporting content creators like me. So let's hear a word from our sponsors.
Let me introduce you to a brand new company that I could not be more excited about: Web3 Sense, a Web3 analytics platform that combines on-chain data with social media insights to give you the deepest, most meaningful intelligence into any NFT community. I have tested other analytics platforms out there, but Web3 Sense has the most comprehensive capabilities I've seen in the NFT ecosystem. They apply sophisticated data science to wallet histories to determine behavioral patterns and help shape predictive analytics. In other words, they can tell you which Twitter accounts are actually the influencers in your space. And they can tell you what resonates most within a community by looking at what other communities' token holders are involved in. The number of use cases here is virtually unlimited. So whether you're a trader, creator, institution, brand, agency, I promise Web3 Sense has data that you want to see, with the deep and actionable insights that you need to build, analyze, grow, start whatever you want to do within the NFT space and in terms of building a business and a community. Now, they are still in very early days, so they're eager to connect with the community. So if you're interested in learning more about what Web3 Sense can do for you and your business, and you should be, go and fill out the very short form linked to in the show notes, and someone from their team will reach out with more information and an opportunity for a product demo. Trust me, you won't regret it. Y'all know the phrase, not your keys, not your crypto. Well, in a world where too many people have had to learn that the hard way, Overpriced JPEGs is proud to partner with Ledger, the world leader in critical digital asset security. Ledger's Nano S Plus and Nano X hardware wallets, paired with the Ledger Live app, Ledger's own software for setting up your Nano device and managing your crypto assets, is the easiest way to start your crypto journey while maintaining full control of your digital assets. You can use all your favorite dApps with Ledger Live, accessing 15 plus Web3 apps, including 1inch, Paraswap, Lido, and Zerion. So you can not only manage, but also grow your portfolio. And Ledger Live is available on mobile and desktop. Securing digital assets shouldn't be complicated. Ledger is as easy as it gets. Uncompromising security, effortless connectivity, full transparency, Ledger is your one-stop shop to trade and track crypto, grow your assets, and manage NFTs. Secure your future with Ledger. Visit shop.ledger.com today or check out the link in the show notes.
Okay, we're back. So Sam had a big risk appetite, and we are going to see that in some physical evidence that we were shown in the courtroom today, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But one thing that I thought was striking was Caroline, as she was describing Sam's risk appetite, gave a particular example that he had given before, which is apparently he would say things like, if you could flip a coin and if it landed on tails, the world would end, but if it landed on heads, then the world would be improved by 2x, he would flip that coin. He felt like that risk reward was worth it, which he was just very risk on. I'm like, no way I'm taking that bet. But anyway, that was an interesting example she gave of how he thought about risk. And I was thinking, what does the jury think of this? If I'm a jury member, I'm like, this man is absolutely fucking bonkers. But let's talk here about the spreadsheets that Caroline prepared and a little bit about FTT. Okay, so we've talked about FTT in the courtroom prior to this, but I felt like today was where we got into it the most. So Caroline said that when FTT was created, this was of course like the FTX exchange token that was created by Sam and by Gary. She said that some percent of it was distributed to seed investors who paid 10 cents per token for it. And then 60 to 70% of it remained with Alameda for free. Alameda didn't have to pay anything to get that 60 to 70% distribution. Now, as soon as FTT was listed on exchanges, it shot up to about $1 pretty quickly. So those early seed investors did nice. She said that Sam said it was psychologically important, basically to the broader market was the implication, that FTT stay above $1, that it be worth more than $1, and that he essentially tasked Alameda with being a backstop, like of buying FTT in as much quantity, however it needed to, in order to keep that FTT price above that $1 mark, because it was important for FTX and in some ways Alameda, in the sense that these were both very entwined, that this price remain above $1. The other important piece with FTT was that initially, Caroline did not put Alameda's FTT holdings on the balance sheets that she presented to lenders. And she didn't include the FTT along with other tokens like Serum, which Sam had created, and there was a series of tokens that we'll get to in just a moment. But she didn't include the FTT on the balance sheet to lenders because this wasn't really a liquid investment. They owned hundreds of millions, maybe even $1 billion, depending on the price of FTT at any given moment, worth of FTT, but they were also the majority holder of FTT. So if they had actually tried to sell those tokens, it would have tanked the price of FTT and of these other tokens. And so while if you marked it to market, they were worth, billions of dollars or whatever, it was a completely misleading number that really just wasn't realistic. But in time, Sam insisted that Caroline start putting FTT and these other tokens on the balance sheet. And this apparently actually did help them get more loans from lenders like Genesis. She testified that at one point, the majority of the collateral that they had put up for their loans from Genesis was in FTT, which, by the way, speaks so poorly of Genesis, because they had to know, even if you weren't in the nitty gritty, you have to know that this FTT is not particularly liquid, and that it serves as a terrible collateral. It just seems so obviously dumb, but that's the situation. And now I mentioned these other tokens. There were a couple of different tokens that were colloquially known as Sam tokens because Sam had either created them or was very involved in them. And that included Serum, FTT, Solana, which of course was ultimately the most liquid of any of them, and another one called Max or Maps. I couldn't quite understand it in court. I'm sure some folks are super familiar with it, but it was another token that Sam basically created. And Alameda held a huge stake in these quote unquote Sam coins. And it was a big part of their balance sheet, even though it was a very misleading part of their balance sheet, which everyone seemed to understand, but when it served Sam's purpose to have it marked to market, he would have them do it on these balance sheets. Now, the other really damning part of this part of the testimony was we saw a signal conversation between Caroline and another Alameda trader called Victor Shu, where she basically says, hey, sorry for being cagey about the FTT trades earlier. And this is a quote that I got. SBF has gotten mad at me for talking about this too publicly before. So basically what she testified was they were buying up a lot of FTT to try and keep the price from dropping at various points. And one of the Alameda traders, Victor Shu, had said, hey, this seems like a weird strategy. It feels like FTT prices are going to fall further. If we want to make the most amount of money, shouldn't we wait until the price of FTT has fallen further before we buy it up again? And Caroline had apparently been pushing back on him on that, specifically because Sam had told her that they should be buying FTT at these various prices because Sam wanted to help prop up the price of FTT. And what's shady about this is she said Sam did not like her talking about this very publicly, which again shows that he knew what they were doing was a little bit, not just a little bit, was totally shady and not okay. And why would he try and obfuscate that if he thought there was nothing wrong with anything they were doing? As I think the defense may try and claim at some later point that Sam really didn't really know. He was just confused by things and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Finally, we get to some of these risk analysis spreadsheets that Caroline put together, which is where we further get some of these smoking guns. So in late 2021, Sam apparently wanted Alameda to have more money, to make more investments. Specifically, venture investments come up. It comes up again it's going to come up again in just a moment here. He really wanted to make venture investments, but he wanted Alameda to have as much money as possible. So he was apparently strongly encouraging Caroline and Alameda to go out and get as much money as possible from as many lenders as possible at any terms possible. And Caroline said he really emphasized that, any terms. Okay, so what did this mean in practice? In practice, it meant that Alameda got a bunch of loans that were open term loans. That means that the lenders could recall their money, could ask for their money back at any point in time. So this is a riskier form of loan as compared to a fixed term loan where it's like, hey, you get your money back in 6 months or a year or 5 years, but you can't ask your money back before then. So you as a business, if it's a fixed term loan and you've gotten that loan, like, you can kind of start to do the math in your head of like, all right, we know we're going to have this debt due in 5 years or whatever. But the open term loan, you could be caught off guard. Like, they could ask for their money back any old time they wanted to. So these were riskier loans. And what's so relevant about this is the fact that Sam wanted to be making all these venture investments, which are very illiquid, like long-term investments. You get this mismatched duration problem that we see over and over again with companies that blow up. Like WeWork had this problem where like you're taking money that inflow of money can stop at any point, and in this case, lenders could ask for their money back at any point, but then you're putting that money into investments that are very illiquid where you can't get your money back very quickly, and so that creates a potentially very damaging situation, and of course, in this situation, it did ultimately. In any case, late 2021, Sam says that he's interested in making $3 billion worth of venture investments, and he wants Caroline to assess the riskiness of that. He has also put forth a hypothetical situation that he wanted her to analyze. And I'm going to show this to you right now. This is my recreation of this document that we saw in court. This is from fall of 2021. He says, do an analysis of like how much risk there is if the following happens. Most of crypto is down 50%. Venture investments are down 100%. The price of FTT, Solana, Serum, et cetera, are down 75%. Stocks are down 25%. Growth tech stocks are down 50%. Genesis tightens requirements from us, potentially restricting the use of FTT as collateral. We buy FTT on the way down. We buy Bitcoin on the way down, and we can't easily raise via equity because of bad FTX news, maybe regulatory. So he's basically saying if all these horrible things happened at once, which of course, funny enough, like basically all these things did happen at once or happen, connected to each other. He said, what would happen to things? And then what would happen additionally if I make $3 billion worth of venture investments? Now he called this a 10th percentile scenario, which it was weird because this was kind of described as both a scenario, there were like basically 10% of scenarios were worse than this and 90% were better than this. And also she said that he would put this like a 10% chance of happening, which are kind of two different meanings of 10th percentile scenarios. But in any case, you get the general gist of this. He did not think this was likely, but he also thought it was like a non-zero chance and that it needed to be analyzed, which like, I guess credit to him for seeing that this could be a scenario. But then of course, down the line, he did not heed the warnings of this scenario at all. So anyway, okay. So Caroline then prepares a spreadsheet, and this is in late 2021. And this spreadsheet has a number of different components to it. It has a baseline scenario. It basically says like where we are right now if nothing changes. Then it has where we are right now in current market conditions if we spend $3 billion on venture investments. And then it does the same thing where it says basically if we do have bad market conditions, what happens if we don't spend $3 billion and what happens if we do spend $3 billion. And I'll cut to the chase here because honestly explaining each of these scenarios, your head starts spinning with numbers and it's a lot. But basically she said, if we hit bad market conditions and we haven't spent $3 billion on venture investments, there's about a 70% chance in her estimation that they would still be able to pay back lenders. Now, some of this math, I have to say, and I won't get into it now, kind of seemed like bullshit. That seemed like too high a percentage, but whatever. She said basically if we don't spend $3 billion on venture investments, even if the market goes bad, I think there's about a 70% chance that we can repay lenders. Now, implicit in this, part of this assumption was that they would be using customer money to repay those lenders. That 70% chance that they'd be able to repay lenders was because they were assuming they could use customer money. Okay. But then she says, if we do make $3 billion worth of venture investments and the market goes bad, there is a 100% chance we will not be able to pay back lenders, even if we use the customer's money, which again, that was just seen as like a given. Obviously, we're going to use customer money for some part of all of this. Okay. So we'll talk about that in a second because that was one of my big takeaways. But she said there's a 100% chance we're not going to be able to pay these loans back if the market goes down in some of the ways you described and we make this $3 billion worth of venture investments. Sam's response to this was to basically say, okay. But what if we made the loans fixed term loans instead of the current open term loans that they are? And then Caroline came back and was like, okay, if we made all of our open term loans fixed term loans and the market went bad and we spent the $3 billion, we could probably still pay back our lenders if all the loans went from open term to fixed term. And Sam was like, dope. And then Caroline and Alameda went out. And so Sam was like, yeah, go try and do that. So they went out and they tried to convert their open term loans to fixed term loans. And a few of them they were able to do that with. And the vast majority of them they were not able to do that with. And nevertheless, Sam went out and announced in January of 2022, FTX Ventures, a $2 billion venture fund. So look, some of the numbers get muddy here, but like the basic premise is Sam took on a crazy amount of risk, even after being shown spreadsheets that demonstrated that if he took on that risk, Alameda would not be able to repay loans, even if they used customer money. And the second massive takeaway was, again, it was like a prerequisite. It was pre-assumed that they were going to use customer money. And Caroline said that was because they had always used customer money. This was the precedent that Sam had set way back when. Now, it's important to understand that the use of customer money came in the form of Alameda using their credit line. We've talked about this, they had this $65 billion line of credit with FTX. So they could just withdraw an endless amount of money from the exchange, this credit line. But like that credit line was tapping into customer deposits because they didn't actually have that money themselves. And there's two different pieces here. I think we've talked about this before, but basically like anytime Alameda was borrowing crypto, it was doing that via its unlimited line of credit on the FTX exchange. And typically when Alameda borrowed fiat dollars, it did that simply by using the customer deposits that had been deposited into the Alameda bank account that was set up back when FTX couldn't get its own bank accounts. So like they would either just take the dollars directly from the bank account that customers were depositing it into, or they would take crypto from the exchange using the unlimited essentially line of credit that they had. And Sam knew about all this. And then Sam went ahead and made this $2 billion worth of investments, which meant that there was a pretty good chance that they weren't going to be able to actually pay any lenders back. And again, just assumed that we'd be able to use customer money, though he understood that there was a risk that they wouldn't be able to pay lenders back even if they used customer money. And that's basically where we ended the Caroline testimony today. Now, I do want to get into the cross-examination because I think there were some pretty important points that came out there as well. And as I mentioned, that actually was at the top of the day. So for those of you who are like really into getting every detail about this trial, we'll get into that. But first, I do want to hear one more word from one of our final sponsors, OpenSea, Web3 Sense, Ledger. I am so grateful to you. Let's hear a word from y'all. Let me tell you about OpenSea Studio. Yes, you know OpenSea. Perhaps you use OpenSea, but did you know they launched OpenSea Studio? It's a one-stop shop for all creators to launch and manage their projects. Using OpenSea Studio, you can create and manage a drop end-to-end, including setting up allow list phases, uploading media and metadata, which has helpful preview functionality, and building the drop page itself. You can also mint an NFT or collection where the creator owns the contract. OpenSea Studio lets you build on all blockchains compatible with OpenSea, and there are 8 of them. Lets buyers mint an NFT from your collection using a credit or debit card, and there are no coding or technical skills required to do any of the above. OpenSea will be adding more features and functionality to OpenSea Studio over the coming months, including revamped collection pages with new storytelling modules, and more ways to leverage NFT technology, including redeemables, which y'all know I'm a huge fan of, and analytics. I'm an OpenSea user because they have the best selection of NFTs and a truly inclusive view of the NFT ecosystem, supporting, as I said, 8 chains in 8 global languages. And because I trust the systems they've built to help keep the space safe, like copyright protection, malicious URL detection or removal, robust verification, and more. It is why they are the place to buy, sell, and now create NFTs. Check them out at the link below, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. All right, y'all, it's been a chunkier episode, but I'm not quite done yet. I want to briefly touch on what we learned or what the defense attorneys did during the cross-examination they did of Gary Wang, which, as I mentioned, was actually at the top of today's, I was going to say episode, but like was at the top of today's trial. And then we moved to the Caroline Ellison stuff. But so I'll just touch on this really briefly. I thought the cross-examination today was better than they have been in previous days. What they clearly tried to do was what they've been doing, right? Trying to poke holes in the prosecution's case. They suggested that Alameda could have had a lot more money than just what they owed to FTX. So they were basically being like, hey, Gary, like you didn't really know the full state of Alameda's balance sheets, did you? Like they could have held assets, and frankly probably did hold some level of assets on other exchanges, in other bank accounts. Like you don't know, just because you knew they had a debt owed to FTX doesn't mean you knew what their entire financial picture was. They were just trying to make it seem like maybe Alameda was stronger than it seemed, and therefore maybe things weren't handled that irresponsibly there. They also spent a while, they were making a point about Alameda being solvent at various points. And there was a very funny moment in this. So solvent means that your assets are worth more than your liabilities. Liquid speaks to your ability to like, I don't even know how to explain this. I'm sure people understand this, right? But like liquid is more about how easily and quickly can you get the money needed to pay back your debt is the context in which this was being used. And so the defense attorneys were trying to make a point that Alameda was solvent at various points in the timeline. It confused the jury as to how bad the situation was for Alameda. And so to get at this, they asked Gary Wang, they said, do you know the difference between solvent and liquid? And Gary's answer, I kid you not, was, I do now. Which was just so funny because it was like, well, yeah, you've now learned the difference between solvent and liquid. Would have been great if more of you understood that back at the time. Anyway, so that elicited some giggles. I tweeted that out earlier. I also thought it was interesting. The defense clearly tried to spend some time pointing out that Sam didn't really know the state of things as of September 2022, or else like why would he be circulating this memo about potentially shutting down Alameda? This is something I talked about in my last video that came out that Sam was considering shutting down Alameda in September of 2022. I think that's fair. I mean, what's interesting, the generous interpretation I would give to the cross-examination, or what I took away hearing the defense's cross-examination, was like, I get it to an extent. There's an element of fog of war to all of this in that you had this company that was growing incredibly quickly, and there was a lot going on, and there were a lot of different assets floating around in different places. And so I can understand that you're not always keeping track of everything really clearly in your head, and you think you have things under control, but maybe you really don't have things under control. I do think there's truth to that there were plenty of points, even very close to November of 2022, where Sam just probably did not have a good grasp of everything that was going on. The problem is that doesn't change the fact that he clearly was okay with customer money being used and customer deposits being used, so long as he felt like they were going to be able to make that money back, et cetera, and they were able to do this like tightrope dance. And that's the problem. Like, that's where you screwed yourself, bud, no matter what else. But again, I do think that there's legitimacy to this idea that Sam was a little bit in over his head, just did not track everything perfectly in his own mind. Also, the defense asked Gary to confirm that Sam told Caroline to hedge more and that he was quite mad when she didn't hedge more. And Gary seemed to confirm that. And then the defense did a lot of stuff about how there's this conflict of interest with Gary since he has this cooperation agreement with the prosecution. They've done this a bunch. They did this with Adam Yedidia as well. Yeah, I get it. There is a bit of a conflict of interest there. Even if Gary lies, if it's a lie that's favorable to the prosecutors, it's kind of unlikely that the prosecutors are going to go after him for it. But of course, the prosecutors have just told him to tell the truth. I don't know. I think it's kind of weak in the grand scheme of things. Like, yeah, there's a conflict of interest there. I get that to a degree. Do I think that means that any of these people, like, do I think that means Gary's lying? No. Do I think that the jurors are going to think that Gary's lying? No, probably not. Anyways, but that was that. That was sort of the bulk of what we got at with cross-examination. Like I said, I think they landed some punches. I can only assume that what they're really doing here is trying to plant seeds that will tee them up for the case they're going to make at the end of all this. Hopefully they're going to do that. And I say hopefully because I really would like this to feel like a fight. Right now, it just feels like a complete domination by the prosecution. But we will see. There's more Caroline Ellison prosecution questioning to come, and then cross-exams from there. So plenty more to discover in all of this. All right, folks, thank you so much for being here. I'll be back in the courtroom tomorrow. I do have a big event tomorrow. I'm hosting an event with Raul Pal. I'm interviewing him tomorrow night. So I'm going to do my very darndest to get a video out tomorrow night, but I don't know exactly what things are going to look like just because my schedule's a little crazy. So I'm going to try and get another video out tomorrow night. If not, we'll get one out on Thursday to cover all of it. And thanks for being here. Thanks to our sponsors, and we'll see you next time.